Hi there, I'm Mike Dano. I'm the editor of Fierce Wireless, and I'm here with John Donovan from AT&T, and we're going to talk about some of AT&T's strategic priorities for this year. So, John, thanks so much for joining me.
Great, happy to be here.
Today, thank you. And so I guess my first question for you was just to discuss the priorities for 2017, just in terms of the network overall, but also in terms of virtualization.
Yeah, well, let's start with the network overall, because the first thing we really do as a network company, we've got to stay close to our knitting. And so the things that we do today, we have to get an A+ in it. We always internally say, if you don't get an A+ in the connectivity, then you don't get the permission to do the rest of the stuff you want to do. So the first thing we do prioritization-wise and capital and investment-wise is to make sure that everything we're doing in the network is super high quality. It's evolving to be current and high performing, high quality, high availability, and make sure that we deliver on that promise that is so integral to our brand. The second thing that we look to do is develop the roadmaps that allow our marketing partners to compete. So we are a service organization inside of AT&T. We like to push the technology. We're excellent that way, but innovation is when invention gets a customer. So we don't lose sight of the fact that whatever our marketing teams look at is by way of competition, roadmaps, we've got to deliver on those, and that's really a high priority as well. And then thirdly and importantly, we've got to evolve our cost structure as a business, and that's where the software and virtualization come into play. And that's an extremely high priority for us because we've put a lot of years into a new architecture, and we're just now starting to see the benefits of not only accomplishing it, but doing more for less. And so, we're really thrilled with where we are in virtualization and software evolution. And those areas tend to be the heavier focus for us.
And so earlier this morning you talked about the percent virtualized that you guys have reached, and you said it's 34% by the end of 2016, surpassing the goal of 30%. And so first, can you say what the goal is for 2017 in terms of total virtualization, and then maybe talk a little bit about what services specifically are being virtualized?
Yeah, let me start with kind of the big picture. What we did we're doing in virtualization of our network, we did in virtualization of our data centers. So if you look at the profile inside the data center, you have a lot of large corporations that said they're moving to the cloud. Our profile was we did a plan. First year we did 5, then we did 30, and then we did 62, and then we did nearly 80. And we're trying to run
this is for the data center.
For the data center. Now we're going into the central office, the wide area network,
right,
and we're saying we want to run a similar trajectory. So we've not put a 2017 target out yet, but you can bet it's going to be somewhere near and parallel to that kind of range. So we did a plan, we did 5%, we did 34%. So when you look back inside the data center and you say, where did you catch your stride? It's in the year you go 5 to 30. Mm-hmm. That's when things have to work and scale, and so at a personal and team level at AT&T, our technology organization, we're thrilled with the progress we've made. Now you asked the question, which services? The answer to that is every new service. We're not in the business anymore of launching things in old architectures, and so when you look at our new voice over IP, voice over LTE, all of those are on software-based platforms. So whether it's network on demand, NetBond serving enterprises, whether it's voice over LTE serving our entire mobile network, every new service is coming in as software.
So does that mean that you're not going back to legacy services and turning them into virtualized services in order to save money? Is that not the strategy? It's only new services?
That is the strategy.
Okay.
So you asked the question about services.
Right. Now
let's drop from services to infrastructure. When you look at the infrastructure, you don't see any of that. That's the horsepower and the pistons and all of the things inside the engine. They won't manifest as a customer. If I decide to run your data session for your mobile device over software or hardware, you wouldn't know the difference. The difference manifests in efficiency and cost savings. So our plan is called for us to do about half of each. We want to do half in services so our customers get excited and our marketing partners see the art of the possible, and we can evolve what the customer sees, but there's great economics for us to do the stuff inside the engine compartment.
Right.
And we're doing about half our projects in there. And so we have virtualized all of our 100 gig circuits. And so when you look at virtualization of a network, we originally thought that may be the hardest thing for us to do. We got that done. And so no one's going to see or hear about it. A customer's going to say, boy, your backbone's awesome. It's got 100 gig to it.
Yeah.
And then I say things like, yeah, well, not only is it super fast, it's super cool, because inside there, it's those light waves called lambdas. They're virtualized. So they used to be separate fibers that were pinned up in one direction across 2 points. Shoot, now we're able to virtualize that and fractionalize it and move it around. And so we're really happy about where the progress we've made in infrastructure. And this is what happens, this is the excitement you get when you start to get at 30%, because you do things you thought were going to be too hard. So you think about it in the beginning, you say, here's the most benefit, and here's the easiest to do. You start with all the easy stuff that's got big benefit. And you run out of those pretty fast. And then when you start to get up into the 30, 40, 50%, you take things from the too hard to do list and you bring them over. You're like, I can do this. I got it. Inside the data center, we were virtualizing applications that were 42 years old, mainframe stuff. And everybody said, why would you do that? And the answer is we could. Because in this march we're on, there's a purity to say we're doing all of it. The exception is something we don't do. So we're going back, not uniformly, but when we set our target at 75% by 2020, the 25% wasn't the too hard to do list. The 25% is the part that we thought was going to be retiring anyhow. So we're not going to go touch something that's on a path for retirement. And we are going to go back and touch all the platforms. And so our percentage from 75 to 100 will occur by retiring out the 25, not by doing more. So.
Got it. And you aren't putting a number on the cost saving, but there is cost saving involved in the program.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there any way to explain the cost savings?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
there are 5 components of cost savings. The first one is the hardware itself is commoditized and less expensive. We operate reverse auctions on a quarterly basis to buy the next quarter's worth. That's our hardware strategy. So it's inconceivable that someone wouldn't be able to project that you can save money doing that.
Right.
We also save money on software because we're not buying redundant components. In the networking world, when you buy an appliance, you buy everything that's in that appliance. And some of those things, software-wise, you're buying over and over again. So not only are you paying for the same functions or features in many appliances, it's really hard to stitch those to get them to work together. So you have an integration burden in addition. So we're decomposing all that. We're not paying for software functions a second or third or fourth, in some cases, 12th time.
Right.
And so software gets to be a little less expensive. Space is less, power is less, and then probably as important as anything is the manpower to operate a software defined network is lower. So the labor efficiency of software-based redundancy instead of hardware-based redundancy is considerable. So if you just look at those 5 categories, I didn't even give you the sixth, which might be the sexiest of all. That is that our utilization goes way up. Because instead of getting reliability of n times 2, we can get the reliability of n plus 2. And so we have a lot less, we can get to a lot higher utilization levels.
So is there a reason that you're not putting a cost-saving number on it? Or is it, I mean, it seems like there would be a lot of cost savings and you would want to sort of trumpet that.
I hope that you get the impression from my answer that we know exactly what the number is.
Right, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, I want to know what the number is.
It's sort of like, I'm giving you answers like Einstein. You're asking for physics, and I'm giving you philosophy. No, I think that the danger in that is that we're in a pretty big skill pivot of our workforce. There's a readiness that's required there. We're in a technology evolution that has seismic impacts to our vendor community. So we have to assist both our employees and our suppliers in this transition. And if you put targets out there that spell, doom and doom, gloom for employees, doom for some of your suppliers, that doesn't help them transition because we need them both. And so we're getting a lot more work done every year. If you look at our capital budget for the last several years, we've hit the capital budget, but we've done way more projects. So we finished Project VIP early. We got 34% and we said we'd do 30. We announced today that our fiber to the home was 4 million, which is a very surprisingly high number compared to what was expected. So we're getting a lot more done for that. So we're bringing more of the future to the present. And I think that's how that thing is manifesting. And so, we're hesitant to roll it all up, put targets out that make people not want to join in kind of the evolution of the industry. And so I think it's our margins and the services we provide, both old and new, have improved as a business outcome. We're well into a skill pivot of our employees. And so I'm not going to break the strategy today, and you're not going to be the guy that breaks me to lay out the model. But believe me,
But I can help, right?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And you can ask over and over again.
So in that case, let me change gears a little bit. I wanted to shoot a couple of other different questions at you. And one of which was you talked about having 40 megahertz of spare spectrum that you can use.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if you could just, are there any indications that you might use that this year, next year, and what would you use it for?
Well, the AWS-3 spectrum is 20 megahertz of that. WCS spectrum is 20 megahertz of that. We have another 10 megahertz of WCS spectrum that we're working with a partner to try to build a capability for utilities to do. It's not broadly usable in its current form because of interference. So that's the 40 megahertz, 20 of AWS-3, 20 of WCS. We've cracked it open and started deploying it. And so when people look and say, hey, you have DirecTV Now and TV Everywhere, DirecTV, your OTT TV product, how are you going to accommodate all that? How are you going to do unlimited? One of the things that we have an advantage of is we're blessed with a favorable spectrum position. And so it varies by market. When I say we cracked it open, we're just starting to open it for various markets just to make sure we understand it. We're going to try to use it for speed in some cases, so we want to aggregate that with other spectrum bands. And so it's not a simple answer because we have as you're sure you're aware, we have one of the most complex spectrum portfolios to deal with. And I think that when you look at the explosion and the growth of the iPhone when we had an exclusive, plus the complexity of our spectrum portfolio, those things were very big challenges. But when you get into your 5th, 6th, 7th year of managing that, it becomes a benefit because you get really good at this kind of stuff. And so we're now very confident about how we're going to do the spectrum strategy. But with all that spectrum, it varies a little bit in each market. So it's dangerous to give you a big blanket description.
So it depends on market by market, case by case, and the type of spectrum that you would be able to support, chipsets that would be available, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's cracked open now. The WCS spectrum is in most of the handsets that we're selling. Well, all the new handsets we're selling. So
you would start using it this year, essentially. So some of it in some locations.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next question I had for you was about 5G. You've talked a lot about 5G in the past few days, and AT&T has done a lot of 5G trials. And so one of the things I think is interesting is that outgoing FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler hinted at a network sharing, the possibility of network sharing for a 5G deployment. And I just wanted to get your initial sort of reaction on the idea of network sharing in terms of rolling out 5G.
Yeah, I'm not real positive on it.
And why not? Well,
because the propagation characteristics of millimeter wave and the higher spectrum, they are shorter distances. As you go to small cells, there's more of interference inherent in your own network. And it's a very complex RF task to manage that. And I don't think that to facilitate an economic benefit that's sort of unknown and not that big, that we should take on a potential quality headache to do so. I'm not a fan of it personally.
Okay, but it has worked in it worked in European. Well,
Tell me where it worked.
It has had some success. There are operators.
Tell me where it worked.
I couldn't name any.
That's my point. It's sort of like an MVNO. You know, you look at MVNOs and you say, well, let's point to where it's working. And everybody thinks that an MVNO works because the cost per megabyte of the network is okay. That's not the cost that kills you. The acquisition cost and the cost to compete in the marketplace and change your prices all the time is there. So theoretically, it looks good on paper, but practically you have different carriers moving at different levels of speed on different technologies, and the potential to do a big quality degradation is too high.
Significant.
I mean, these are they're life balancing services. It's not like, you know, we always joke internally, and then we don't joke internally, but we joke internally that the network, if perfectly performed, is invisible, and it's like oxygen. It's necessary to live, but you know, you only recognize its value in its absence. Have the wireless network go down for a couple hours and see what happens.
Right.
It's a real storm. Then we humanize it by saying, you know, let's take a look at the services that are riding on here, and you know, in order for my folks to get empathy for what happens with our networks, every once in a while I'll roll a video of customers and what they're doing with it, so they understand that these are vital services
that you can't necessarily test services on.
Right, and so every drop call is a problem.
Yeah.
May not be a problem if I'm calling one of my kids, but you know, these are lifeblood services that are in ambulances and birth rooms and so on and so forth. And so you can't, you got to take it extremely seriously. So I don't, this whole idea of, hey, let's, you know, share because it's, you know, sounds good. It's, you know, I'll give you a funny story. I won't say who it was, but a luminary who was up there pitching the idea of shared spectrum, couldn't get his mic to work. And he said, we're at a wireless conference. How can my mic not be working? I said, it's interfering with these phones because it's sharing spectrum. So, you know, it's
a good example.
It's a great example
the
of
problems,
stepping in it right there. Yeah, that
okay.
was an interesting end to that panel.
Yeah. All right. Well, Donovan, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.